Hey friends, before we jump into this super cool story, I need you to do something fun. Drop a comment below and tell me, has anyone ever made fun of you for something silly like your shoes, your backpack, or maybe your bike? It feels rotten, right? Oh, and if you love stories that grab you and don't let go, hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you're gonna want to stick around for this one. Ready? Let's dive in. Picture a tiny town called Maple Grove. It's the kind of place where everybody knows your name and the streets are lined with cozy houses and big, shady trees. The sun shines bright, kids ride their bikes, and neighbors chat over fences. It's quiet, friendly, and feels like home. But in Maple Grove, things aren't always as perfect as they seem. Sometimes, people judge others without knowing the whole story. And that's exactly what happened to Alex Carter. Alex was 25 years old, with a big, friendly smile that made you feel like you'd known him forever. He wore a faded baseball cap, a plain t-shirt, and jeans with a little dirt on them. Every morning he climbed into his old, rusty car, a blue sedan that looked like it belonged in a junkyard. The car made funny noises like it was coughing or sneezing. It rattled and shook as it rolled down Main Street, the busiest road in Maple Grove. When people saw Alex driving, they'd point and giggle. "Look at that junky car," they'd say. "Poor Alex, he must not have much money." The neighbors didn't mean to be mean, but they made a big mistake. They thought Alex was just a regular guy, someone who didn't matter much. They saw his rusty car and his greasy hands and decided he was nobody special. "He's just a handyman," they'd whisper. "Probably fixes leaky sinks or something." Kids would laugh when his car backfired with a loud pop. Grown-ups would shake their heads and say, "Alex should get a better car, that thing's an eyesore." But here's the thing nobody in Maple Grove knew. Alex wasn't just some guy with a beat-up car. He was secretly the best mechanic around, not just in Maple Grove but in 3 whole counties. His hands, covered in grease, weren't dirty from fixing sinks. They were busy working on the fanciest cars in town. Big shiny cars that cost more money than most houses. Like the sleek black limousine owned by Mr. Grayson, the richest man in the county. That limo. It purred like a happy cat because Alex was the one who kept it running perfectly. Alex worked at a small garage on the edge of town. It wasn't a fancy place, just a little building with a red roof and a sign that said Carter's Auto Shop. Inside there were tools everywhere, wrenches, screwdrivers, and machines that looked like they came from a spaceship. Alex could fix anything with wheels. He could make an engine sing or a broken tire roll like new, but he never bragged. He didn't tell people about the important cars he fixed or the big shots who trusted him. He just did his job, smiled, and went home to his little house. Every day, Alex drove his noisy car through Maple Grove. He'd wave at the kids playing in their yards even when they giggled at his car. He'd nod at the neighbors even when they gave him pitying looks. Why didn't he buy a new car? Everyone wondered. If he was a mechanic, shouldn't he have something shiny? But Alex didn't care what they thought. He loved his old car. It wasn't pretty, but it got him where he needed to go. Plus, he had a secret reason for keeping it, a reason nobody guessed. Sometimes, Alex would park his car in his driveway and hear whispers from across the street. "That car so ugly," a neighbor named Mrs. Jenkins would say, sipping her lemonade. "It makes the whole street look bad." Her friend Mr. Lopez would nod. "Yeah, Alex seems nice, but he should fix that thing up. It's embarrassing." Alex would just keep working, maybe tinkering with his mailbox or watering his flowers. He'd hear the comments, but he'd only smile. His smile wasn't big or loud. It was small, like he knew something nobody else did. Deep down, Alex was used to being underestimated. Growing up, people didn't think he'd amount to much. In school, kids called him Grease Monkey because he was always messing with old radios or bike chains. Teachers said he was book smart and told him to stick to simple jobs, but Alex had a gift. He could look at a broken machine and figure out how to make it work again. By the time he was 18, he was fixing cars for people all over town. By 25, he was the guy big companies called when their fancy vehicles broke down. But in Maple Grove, nobody knew. To them, he was just Alex with the rusty car. One person in town loved picking on Alex more than anyone else. His name was Brad, and he was the loudest, meanest neighbor on the block. Brad was tall, with a booming voice and a shiny red truck that he polished every weekend. He thought he was the coolest guy in Maple Grove. He worked for Mr. Grayson, the rich man with the limousine, and he never let anyone forget it. "I'm important," Brad would say, puffing out his chest. "I help run Mr. Grayson's business. You all better listen to me." Brad didn't like Alex's car one bit. Every time he saw it, he'd make a big show of laughing. "What's that pile of junk doing here?" He'd yell loud enough for everyone to hear. He'd point at Alex's car and shake his head like it was the worst thing he'd ever seen. The other neighbors would chuckle nervously, not wanting to make Brad mad. But Alex, he'd just shrug and keep going. He didn't argue or yell back. He'd look at Brad with that quiet smile, like he was waiting for something. One day, Brad went too far. Alex was outside, checking the oil in his car. The hood was up, and Alex was humming a little tune, happy as could be. Brad strutted over, his boots thumping on the pavement. "Hey, junkyard boy," he called, smirking. "You call that a car? It's a disgrace. You're making this whole neighborhood look trashy." He leaned against his shiny truck, arms crossed, waiting for Alex to get upset. But Alex didn't get mad. He wiped his hands on a rag and looked at Brad. "It's my car, Brad," he said, calm and steady. "It works fine for me." Brad laughed, a big mean laugh that echoed down the street. "Works fine? It's a joke. You're a joke, Alex. I bet you can't even fix a tricycle." A few kids riding by slowed down to watch. Mrs. Jenkins peeked out her window. Brad was loving the attention. What Brad didn't know was that Alex wasn't just any mechanic. He was the guy Mr. Grayson trusted to fix his limousine, the same limousine Brad bragged about driving around. Alex could have told Brad right then and there. He could have said, "I fix your boss's car, so back off." But he didn't. He just tucked his rag in his pocket and went back to work. His eyes, though, they had a little spark, like he was planning something. Alex's life in Maple Grove wasn't fancy, but it was his. He lived in a small house with a tiny porch and a garden he tried to keep alive. He'd sit on that porch sometimes, sipping iced tea and watching the sunset. His car sat in the driveway, rusty but reliable. To Alex, it wasn't about looking cool or impressing people. It was about doing what he loved, fixing things, making them better. He didn't need a shiny truck like Brad's to feel good about himself. But Brad's mean words were starting to stir things up. Other neighbors began to agree with him. "Maybe Brad's right," Mr. Lopez said one day. "That car does look bad. Maybe Alex should park it somewhere else." Mrs. Jenkins nodded. "It's not good for the neighborhood." The whispers were getting louder, and Alex could feel the pressure building. Still, he didn't say a word. He kept his secret close, like a card he wasn't ready to play. Why did Alex tell everyone he was a super talented mechanic? Why didn't he show off the fancy cars he fixed? Maybe because he didn't need to prove himself to people who judged him. Or maybe because he knew the truth would come out when the time was right. Either way, something big was brewing in Maple Grove. Brad's loud mouth and mean attitude were about to run into a wall named Alex Carter. So what was Alex hiding? What made him so calm when everyone laughed at his car? Nobody in Maple Grove had a clue, but they were about to find out. Brad thought he was the king of the neighborhood, but Alex, he was holding a secret that could change everything. And it all started with that rusty, beat-up car that everyone loved to hate. In Maple Grove, trouble was brewing, and it all started with a guy named Brad. Brad was the kind of person who thought he was the boss of everyone. He was tall, loud, and always driving around in his shiny red truck. That truck was his pride and joy. He'd polish it every weekend until it sparkled like a new toy. To Brad, that truck proved he was better than everyone else. And if he thought you weren't as cool as him, watch out. He loved picking on people he thought were beneath him. Alex Carter was Brad's favorite person to tease. Alex was the quiet guy with the rusty blue car that coughed and sputtered down Main Street. Every time Brad saw that car, he'd grin like a cat that caught a mouse. He'd lean out his truck window and yell, "Hey, junkyard boy, when you gonna ditch that pile of rust?" His voice was so loud it echoed across the neighborhood. Kids on their bikes would giggle. Neighbors would peek out their doors, shaking their heads. Brad loved the attention. To him, making fun of Alex was like a game, and he always thought he won. One sunny afternoon, Brad decided to take things up a notch. Alex was in his driveway, wiping down his old car with a rag. The car wasn't pretty, its paint was chipped, and one door had a dent, but Alex didn't mind. He was humming a little tune, happy as could be. The sun was shining, birds were chirping, and Maple Grove felt peaceful, but not for long. Brad's shiny truck pulled up across the street, and out he came, stomping over like he owned the place. "Hey, Alex," Brad called, his voice booming. He crossed his arms and stood tall, smirking. "This car is an eyesore. It's so ugly, it's bringing down the whole neighborhood." A few neighbors heard the noise and peeked out their windows. Mrs. Jenkins, who lived next door, pulled back her curtain. Mr. Lopez, watering his lawn, turned to watch. Brad saw them looking and grinned even bigger. He loved having an audience. Alex didn't look up right away. He kept wiping his car, his rag moving slow and steady like he hadn't even heard Brad. Finally, he stood up straight and looked at Brad. "It gets me around, Brad," he said. His voice was calm, like he was talking about the weather. But if you looked really close, you'd see a tiny spark in his eyes. It was like he was hiding something big. Brad didn't notice that spark. He was too busy laughing, a loud, mean laugh that made the kids nearby stop playing. "Gets you around," Brad said, shaking his head. "Ha, you're a nobody, Alex. This car's a joke, and so are you." He took a step closer, pointing at the car. "I work for Mr. Grayson, you know, big guy, big money. I'm important around here. You don't even belong in Maple Grove." Brad's words were sharp, like he wanted them to sting. He wanted Alex to get mad or embarrassed. He wanted everyone to see Alex shrink away. But Alex didn't shrink. He didn't get mad or yell back. He just stood there holding his rag, looking at Brad with that same calm face. "Okay, Brad," he said, so quiet you could barely hear him. Then he went back to wiping his car like Brad's words were just a breeze passing by. That made Brad mad. He wasn't used to people ignoring him. He wanted a fight, but Alex wasn't giving him one. So Brad huffed, turned around, and strutted back to his truck, sure he'd won anyway. "You'll see," he called over his shoulder. "I'm gonna make sure everyone knows what a loser you are." The neighbors watched Brad drive off, his truck roaring loud. Mrs. Jenkins closed her curtain. Mr. Lopez went back to his watering. The kids started playing again, but the air felt different now, like something was starting. Brad thought he was in charge, but Alex, he wasn't fazed at all. He dealt with guys like Brad before, loudmouths who thought they could push people around. Alex knew better. He knew something Brad didn't, and it was a secret that could turn everything upside down. See, Brad loved to brag about working for Mr. Grayson, the richest man in town. Mr. Grayson had a big house, a big business, and a super fancy black limousine that looked like it belonged in a movie. Brad would tell everyone, "I'm Mr. Grayson's right-hand man, I help run his company." But what Brad didn't know was that Alex was the one who kept Mr. Grayson's limousine running. Every time that car needed a tune-up or a fix, Alex was the guy Mr. Grayson called. Alex's hands, covered in grease, knew every bolt and wire in that limo. He made it purr like a happy kitten. Brad had no idea. Alex never told anyone about his work with Mr. Grayson. He didn't need to. He wasn't the kind of guy who bragged or showed off. But Brad's mean words were starting to make waves. After that day in the driveway, Brad didn't stop. He'd drive by Alex's house and honk his horn, laughing. He'd tell the neighbors, "We gotta do something about that junky car." Some people started listening. Mrs. Jenkins said, "Maybe Brad's right. That car does look bad." Mr. Lopez nodded. "It's not good for the neighborhood." The whispers were getting louder, and Brad was loving every minute of it. But Alex stayed calm. He'd hear Brad's honks and see the neighbors' looks, but he didn't let it bother him. He'd go to his garage every day, working on cars, fixing engines, and making things right. His toolbox was full of shiny tools, the kind you'd see in a pro shop. Nobody in Maple Grove knew how good Alex was at his job. They just saw his rusty car and thought, "Poor Alex." But Alex wasn't poor, and he wasn't weak. He was waiting, watching, and keeping his secret close. Brad's big mouth was digging him into a hole, but he didn't know it yet. Every time he teased Alex, every time he laughed, he was making things worse for himself. Alex didn't need to shout or fight back. He had something better, a truth that was going to surprise everyone. Brad thought he was the king of Maple Grove, but kings can fall. And Alex, he was ready to show the neighborhood that the quiet guy with the rusty car wasn't someone to mess with. Days turned into weeks in Maple Grove, and Brad didn't stop his mean games. He was like a big, loud storm that wouldn't go away. Every chance he got, he picked on Alex and his rusty blue car. Brad started telling everyone in the neighborhood that Alex's car was a disgrace. He'd stand on his porch, pointing at Alex's driveway and say, "That junky car makes our street look terrible." His voice was so loud, it carried all the way down Main Street. People listened, and some even started to agree. One morning, Alex woke up to find a note taped to his car's windshield. It was written in big, messy letters. "Scrap this junk." Alex knew right away it was from Brad. He pulled the note off, read it, and shook his head. He didn't get mad or yell. He just folded the paper and slipped it into his pocket. A few neighbors saw the note from their windows. Some, wanting to stay on Brad's good side, whispered to each other. "Maybe Brad's right," said Mrs. Jenkins, sipping her coffee. "That car does look pretty bad." Mr. Lopez, who lived across the street, nodded. "It's not good for the neighborhood," he said quietly. The pressure was building like a balloon about to pop, but Alex, he stayed cool as a cucumber. Alex wasn't the kind of guy to let mean words get him down. He'd heard stuff like this before. Growing up, kids teased him for always having grease on his hands or for fixing old bikes in his garage. But Alex knew he was good at something special. He could fix anything, cars, trucks, even fancy machines. And in Maple Grove, he had a big secret nobody guessed. He was the mechanic who kept Mr. Grayson's shiny black limousine running. Mr. Grayson was the richest man in town, and his limo was like a superstar car, long, sleek, and super fancy. Alex made sure it worked perfectly, but he never told a soul. One evening, Alex was working late at his garage. The sun had gone down, and the little red-roofed building was quiet except for the clink of his tools. His toolbox wasn't like the ones you'd find at a regular store. It was packed with shiny wrenches, screwdrivers, and gadgets that looked like they belonged in a movie. Nobody in Maple Grove knew, but Alex had trained with the best mechanics in the city. He wasn't just good, he was amazing. As he tightened a bolt on a sleek black car, he heard a voice outside. It was Brad talking loud on his phone. "Yeah, Mr. Grayson's limo is acting up again," Brad said, packing back and forth. "Boss is super mad, says he needs it fixed by tomorrow or heads will roll." Brad laughed like it was no big deal, but Alex's ears perked up. He knew that limousine inside and out. He'd fixed its engine just last month, making it run smoother than ever. Alex stopped working for a second and listened. A slow smile spread across his face, like he'd just found a missing puzzle piece. Brad had no idea who he was messing with. Alex went back to his work, but his mind was racing. He thought about Brad's mean note, his loud yells, and all the times he'd bragged about being Mr. Grayson's right-hand man. Brad thought he was so important, but Alex knew the truth. Brad didn't fix the limo, Alex did. And if Mr. Grayson needed that car fixed by tomorrow, Alex was the one who'd make it happen. Brad was just a loud guy with a shiny truck, but Alex, he was the guy who kept things running. The next day, Brad was at it again. He drove his red truck through the neighborhood, honking when he passed Alex's house. "Hey, junkyard boy," he shouted, laughing. "I'm Mr. Grayson's right-hand man. I'll make sure that ugly car of yours gets towed if you don't shape up." Some kids playing nearby stopped to watch. Mrs. Jenkins peeked out her door, frowning. Mr. Lopez shook his head. Brad was stirring up trouble, and more neighbors were starting to side with him. "That car's got to go," one said. "Brad's right, it's a mess." But Alex wasn't worried. He went about his day like nothing was wrong. He mowed his lawn, waved at the kids, and drove his rusty car to the garage. Every mean comment, every nasty note, he tucked them away like pieces of a plan. He didn't argue with Brad or tell the neighbors he was wrong. Instead, he watched and listened. At the garage, he worked on cars, his hands moving fast and sure. He fixed a pickup truck for a farmer, then checked the brakes on a minivan. All the while, he thought about Brad and that limousine. One afternoon, Alex was at the store buying some soda when he overheard two neighbors talking. "Brad's planning something big," one said. "He's calling a neighborhood meeting to talk about Alex's car." The other nodded. "Yeah, he says it's time to get serious, maybe even get the town to make Alex move that car." Alex pretended not to hear, but he was paying attention. A meeting, that sounded like Brad was ready to make a big show. Alex's smile came back just a little. He knew Brad was setting himself up for a fall. Back at home, Alex sat on his porch sipping his soda. His rusty car sat in the driveway, same as always. He looked at it and thought about all the things he could do. He could buy a new car, something shiny like Brad's truck. He had the money, but Alex didn't want to show off. He liked his old car. It was part of who he was, and besides, he had a feeling that car was going to help him teach Brad a lesson. Every day, Brad got louder. He'd stop by Alex's house and yell, "Fix that car or else." He'd tell everyone at the neighborhood diner that Alex was ruining Maple Grove. More neighbors started to agree, afraid to make Brad mad. The pressure was on, but Alex stayed calm. He kept working, kept smiling, kept waiting. He knew something big was coming. Brad thought he was in charge, but Alex was quietly setting the stage for a surprise, and it was going to happen sooner than anyone expected. The community hall in Maple Grove was buzzing like a beehive. Every chair was filled, and people stood along the walls, whispering to each other. Brad had called this big neighborhood meeting, and he said it was to fix the Alex problem. Everyone knew what he meant. Brad had been picking on Alex Carter and his rusty blue car for weeks, calling it a disgrace and saying it made the whole town look bad. Now, he was ready to make a big show of it. Brad stood at the front of the hall, tall and loud, with a smirk on his face. His shiny red truck was parked outside, sparkling under the streetlights, and he acted like he was the king of Maple Grove. The crowd watched him, some nodding, some looking unsure. "Alex's car is a joke," Brad boomed, his voice filling the room. "It's ugly, it's rusty, and it's ruining our neighborhood. We need rules. I say we fine him until he gets rid of that rust bucket." A few neighbors clapped. Others murmured, agreeing quietly. Mrs. Jenkins, who lived next to Alex, nodded her head. Mr. Lopez from across the street crossed his arms and frowned. Brad's words were working. He was sure he was winning. In the back of the room, Alex sat quietly. His baseball cap was pulled low over his eyes and his hands rested in his lap. He didn't look mad or scared. He just watched like he was waiting for something. Nobody paid him much attention. To them, he was just the guy with the junky car, the guy Brad called Junkyard Boy. But Alex wasn't worried. He had a secret, and the time to share it was coming. Brad kept talking, pointing to the crowd. "I work for Mr. Grayson," he bragged. "You all know him, the richest man in town. I'm his right-hand man, and I say we don't need people like Alex dragging us down." The crowd got louder, some cheering for Brad. He grinned, loving the attention. He thought he had everyone on his side. He thought Alex would just sit there and take it, but he was wrong. Then something happened. Alex stood up. The room went quiet, like someone had turned off the sound. Every head turned to look at him. Alex didn't rush. He walked to the front of the hall, slow and steady, his hands in his pockets. He looked calm, but there was something strong in the way he moved, like he knew exactly what he was doing. Brad's smirk faltered just a little. He wasn't expecting this. "Can I say something?" Alex asked, his voice clear and steady. Brad snorted, trying to act tough. "Go ahead, Junkyard Boy," he said, waving his hand. "Beg all you want, it won't help." The crowd laughed nervously, thinking Alex was about to give up. But Alex wasn't begging, he wasn't giving up, he was ready to change everything. Alex reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He held it up so everyone could see. "Brad, you work for Mr. Grayson, right?" he said, looking right at Brad. Brad puffed out his chest, proud as ever. "Yeah, so," he snapped. "What's that got to do with anything?" Alex didn't answer right away. He just tapped his phone, and suddenly, a picture popped up on the big projector screen at the front of the hall. The crowd gasped. It was a photo of Mr. Grayson's sleek black limousine parked inside Alex's garage. The car was shiny, perfect, like something from a fancy movie. Everyone knew that limo. It was Mr. Grayson's pride and joy, the car he rode into all his big meetings. But why was it in Alex's garage? People leaned forward, whispering, their eyes wide. "That's right," Alex said, his voice steady as a rock. "I'm the mechanic who fixes your boss's limo. Every bolt, every wire, I keep it running. I make sure it's perfect for Mr. Grayson." He paused, letting his words sink in. The room was so quiet, you could hear a pin drop. Brad's face froze. His mouth opened, but no words came out. The crowd started murmuring, looking from Alex to Brad and back again. "And that junky car you hate," Alex went on, turning to face Brad. "It's my choice. I could drive anything I want. I've got the money, the skills, but I don't need to show off like some people." He didn't say Brad's name, but everyone knew who he meant. The neighbors gasped again, some covering their mouths. Mrs. Jenkins' eyes got big. Mr. Lopez leaned forward in his chair. Brad's smirk was gone, replaced by a red flush creeping up his neck. You're lying," Brad stammered, his voice shaky. He pointed at Alex, but his hand was trembling. "There's no way you fix Mr. Grayson's car. You're just a nobody." The crowd went quiet again, waiting to see what would happen. Brad was trying to save face, but he was losing fast. Alex didn't flinch. He reached into his other pocket and pulled out a piece of paper. He unfolded it and held it up. It was a work order signed by Mr. Grayson himself. The paper said, "Thank you, Alex Carter, for fixing my limousine. Your work is the best. Robert Grayson." Alex turned the paper so everyone could see. The projector zoomed in and the signature was clear as day. The crowd erupted in whispers. "Is that real?" someone asked. "Alex fixes Mr. Grayson's car," said another. Mrs. Jenkins clapped a hand to her chest. Mr. Lopez's jaw dropped. Brad's face turned pale, like he'd seen a ghost. He opened his mouth to say something, but nothing came out. For the first time ever, Brad had nothing to say. His big, loud voice was gone. He stood there, looking small, like a balloon that had lost all its air. The neighbors stared at him, then at Alex. They couldn't believe it. Alex, the quiet guy with the rusty car, was the one who kept Mr. Grayson's fancy limousine running. It was too much to take in. Alex put his phone and the paper back in his pockets. He looked at the crowd, calm and sure. "I don't care what you think about my car," he said. "It's mine and I like it, but I won't let anyone push me around, not Brad, not anybody." He looked right at Brad when he said it. The crowd was silent, hanging on his every word. Brad shrank back, his eyes darting around like he wanted to run. The air in the hall felt different now. It was like the whole room had flipped. Brad had come in thinking he was the boss, ready to make Alex look small. But now Alex was the one standing tall. The neighbors who had nodded along with Brad were quiet now, looking embarrassed. They judged Alex without knowing the truth. And Brad, he'd picked on the wrong guy. After that big meeting in the community hall, Maple Grove wasn't the same. The air felt different, like a storm had passed and left everything calm and clear. Brad, the loud guy who thought he was the king of the neighborhood, didn't look so big anymore. When the meeting ended, he didn't stick around to brag or laugh. He slunk out of the hall, his head down, his boots dragging on the floor. Nobody followed him. Nobody cheered. For the first time, Brad was quiet, and it was because everyone had seen the truth. Word spread fast in Maple Grove, like a rumor in a school playground. The next morning, everyone was talking about what happened. They heard that Mr. Grayson, the richest man in town, had called Alex the best mechanic he'd ever met. Can you believe it? Alex, the guy with the rusty blue car, was the one who kept Mr. Grayson's fancy black limousine running. Neighbors chatted about it at the diner, at the grocery store, and in their front yards. Did you know Alex fixes that big limo? One said. I had no idea, said another. Brad's mean words about Alex's car didn't matter anymore. Nobody listened to his boasts now. Brad still worked for Mr. Grayson, driving trucks and running errands, but he wasn't the same. He didn't strut around in his shiny red truck, honking and yelling. He didn't call Alex junkyard boy or make fun of his car. He kept his mouth shut, like he was afraid to say the wrong thing. Nobody liked a bully, especially one who picked on the wrong guy. Brad had thought he could push Alex around, but he'd learned his lesson the hard way. The neighbors who used to nod along with Brad's complaints now turned away when he walked by. They didn't want to hear his loud voice anymore. Meanwhile, things started changing for Alex. The same neighbors who used to laugh at his rusty car now acted differently. When Alex drove down Main Street, his car coughing and rattling, people didn't giggle or shake their heads. Instead, they waved and smiled. Hey Alex, they call, like he was their new best friend. One day, Mrs. Jenkins, who lived next door, walked over to Alex's garage with a plate of homemade cookies. Her face was red and she looked a little shy. Sorry, Alex, she said, holding out the cookies. We didn't know you were such a big deal. We shouldn't have listened to Brad. Alex took the cookies and gave her his friendly grin. No hard feelings, he said. I just like fixing things. Mrs. Jenkins smiled, relieved, and walked back home. She wasn't the only one. Mr. Lopez, who used to frown at Alex's car, stopped by with a soda. I was wrong about you, he said. You're a good guy, Alex. Even the kids in the neighborhood started looking at Alex differently. They'd ride their bikes by his garage and yell, "Cool car, Alex." They didn't think his car was junk anymore. To them, it was awesome because it was Alex's. Alex went back to his usual routine, like nothing had changed. Every morning he'd climb into his rusty blue car and drive to his garage. He'd park it out front, right where everyone could see it. He'd spend his days fixing cars, pickup trucks, minivans, and sometimes even Mr. Grayson's fancy limousine. His toolbox, full of shiny tools, clinked and clanked as he worked. Alex was happy doing what he loved. He didn't need a new car or a big house to feel good. He just needed his tools, his skills, and his little place in Maple Grove. But something was different now. The neighborhood saw Alex's car in a new way. It wasn't junk, it was Alex's choice. They realized he could drive anything he wanted. He had the money and the know-how. But he kept his old car because it meant something to him. Maybe it reminded him of where he came from or how hard he'd worked. Whatever the reason, people stopped judging it. They started to respect Alex, not just for fixing fancy cars, but for being himself. Maple Grove felt quieter now, and not just because Brad wasn't yelling. It felt fairer, like everyone had learned something important. Neighbors stopped whispering mean things about each other. They started saying hello, helping out, and being kind. The kids played together without picking on anyone. Mrs. Jenkins shared her cookies with more than just Alex. Mr. Lopez invited people over for barbecues. The town felt like a real community again, where people cared about each other. One sunny afternoon, Alex was sitting on his porch sipping iced tea. His rusty car sat in the driveway, same as always. A few kids rode by on their bikes, waving. "Hi, Alex," they shouted. Alex waved back, his cap tilted back so you could see his smile. Across the street, Brad's shiny red truck was parked, but Brad was nowhere in sight. He'd been keeping a low profile, and that was just fine with everyone. Alex thought about the meeting and everything that happened. He didn't feel like he'd won a big fight or beaten Brad. He just felt like he'd shown the truth. He stood up for himself, and that was enough. The neighbors who used to follow Brad's lead now understood that judging people by their cars or clothes was wrong. They saw Alex for who he really was, a kind, hardworking guy with a talent nobody could ignore. As the sun set, painting the sky pink and orange, Alex leaned back in his chair. Maple Grove was peaceful and he felt at home. His car, his garage, his life, they were all his and he was proud of them. The neighborhood had changed for the better and Alex knew he'd had a part in that. It wasn't about being famous or showing off. It was about being fair, being real, and doing what was right. The lesson was clear: don't judge someone before you know their story. Alex's rusty car wasn't a sign he was less than anyone else. It was a sign he was strong enough to choose his own path. In Brad, he'd learned that being loud and mean didn't make you a winner. It just made you look small when the truth came out. And that's the story of Alex and his rusty car friends. What a wild ride, right? It started with a quiet guy in a small town, driving a beat-up car that everyone laughed at. But by the end, Alex showed everyone that he was way more than they thought. He wasn't just some guy with a junky car. He was the best mechanic around, fixing fancy limousines for the richest man in town. This story teaches us something super important. You can't judge a book by its cover. Think about it. People in Maple Grove saw Alex's rusty car and thought he was a nobody. They giggled and whispered, following Brad's mean words. But Alex was hiding something incredible. He didn't need a shiny truck or a big house to prove he was special. His skills, his hard work, and his kind heart did all the talking. He stayed calm even when Brad was loud and mean. And when the time was right, Alex showed the truth in a way nobody could ignore. That's what makes this story so cool. Brad, on the other hand, learned a big lesson the hard way. He thought being loud and picking on Alex would make him look big, but it backfired big time. When everyone found out Alex was the one fixing Mr. Grayson's limousine, Brad's boasts didn't mean anything anymore. He went from acting like a king to looking small and quiet. It shows that being mean doesn't make you strong. It just makes you look silly when the truth comes out. So what's the big lesson here? The quiet ones often have the loudest secrets. Just because someone doesn't show off doesn't mean they're not amazing. Maybe they're good at something you'd never guess, like fixing cars, drawing pictures, or helping others. Don't judge people by their clothes, their toys, or their cars. Get to know them first. You might be surprised by how awesome they are. This story makes me think about all the times people get judged for silly things. Maybe someone laughed at your old sneakers or your messy backpack. Maybe they thought you weren't good at something because you didn't brag. But like Alex, you can show them who you really are by being yourself and doing what you love. That's what matters most. Thanks for sticking with me through this story, friends. I hope it made you smile and think. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me, has anyone ever underestimated you? Maybe they thought you couldn't do something, but you proved them wrong. What happened? Share your story. I can't wait to read it. And if you love this tale, give it a big thumbs up. It helps a ton. Hit that subscribe button too so you don't miss the next story. I'll see you soon for another fun adventure.